I don't know.
I would just
Perhaps he's studying.
Right, it's 5 o'clock. Welcome to the meeting. Because we've got a member of the public with us, Mr. Goss, who's going to speak to item number 8, I understand. So, pardon? Sorry, I thought somebody said something.
Have we got enough?
Yes. Just. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and not the lifts. Out of the building, please gather alongside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door in which you entered the room or by fire exits which are clearly marked with standard green fire exit signs. Any assistance or evacuation of the building, please make yourself known to a member of the staff. Also, please make sure that your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. And I advise everybody meeting that all of the meeting will be recorded for future broadcast.
Right, Sam.
Item number 2, apologies.
We've had an apology from Gori Sonola.
Okay. No others? Okay. Chair.
I would like to apologise for missing the last meeting, because everybody thinks I'm over the other side of the world. Because, not being at the AGM, I thought I was on planning, like I have for the last 20 years. But they suddenly changed me and put me on this one. I ain't got a clue why, but I attended that because they sent me the minutes and everything. So I stopped there and signed the book. That's why I didn't hit the other one. But then I read the other, I thought, well, Lloyd, they ain't going to let you stop up there, they put you on this one. So I'm now come because, but I did think I was on the other one, so that's my reason anyway. Sorry about that, I left because I was attended one and missed this one.
I'm sure the panel are willing to say.
Well, I thought you'd better know that I didn't miss it purposely, just,
Okay, Tony.
sorry about that.
Any other apologies? Minutes. Confirm the minutes that was held on 20th of July.
I'll move we confirm the minutes.
Okay, thank you. That's all right with everybody? Declarations of interest, other than the ones that have been recorded. Okay. Item number 5 then is public consultation. I believe we've got a public speaker, Mr. Goss. You wish to speak to item number 8, I understand, integral performance report.
Yeah, there's a couple of two.
Could, I think the procedure is that we get officer. Is that right? We get officer to present the report and then question after.
We can do it that way, Chair, if that's your wish.
But I'm just trying to get us correct.
I'm more than happy to do it that way. More than happy. Would you like me to present the report and call upon my colleagues as and when, if that's okay with you, Chair?
Okay. And then we'll bring you in afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
So Chair, we're starting with the report which starts on page 34 of the agenda. First things first, before we get into the appendices, I just wanted to flag, because it's something we tend to skate over, but I will just flag it on this particular occasion. Item 4 on page 35, the Regulation of Investigative Powers Act 2000. As you know, it is a requirement of the Surveillance Commissioner that we have member oversight of the use of that power, and I can confirm that we have not undertaken any surveillance operations under REPA since the last meeting. In fact, I can't remember the last time we actually did work with it some years ago. So I'm just drawing that to your attention. That then brings us, Chair, to the appendices, Appendix A in particular. And you will see we have a dashboard there, and perhaps the most significant point to draw, and we'll turn to this when we come to the table over the page on page 38, is the position in terms of the outturn tracker, and you will see that there is a marked variance there between the forecast outturn and the budget outturn. I'll come to that when we get to the detail of it, but largely it's attributable to commercial property. The turning the page, Chair, to page 38, you will see that there is emboldened on that table a number of particular areas of activity. The one that I would focus and draw your attention to is commercial property and industrial estates, where it is showing a variance of £277,000 above the budget. Members will be aware, or should be aware, I think by now, it's been raised at council, I think, and it's also been in the press, that the Poundland store is currently it's occupied, but on a short-term leasing arrangement with Poundland at I think technically it's £1 a year, if not a peppercorn rent. And the reason for that, Chair, I can tell you, is because it was a case of the company going into liquidation and it being faced with the prospect of closing altogether and withdrawing from the town. It was taken, a view was taken at the time that it was better to have it occupied, paying rates, than just being left vacant. The other items on that page, Chair, are relatively, obviously you've got a very small positive variance on democratic representation management. You'll see that markets are showing a favourable position in terms of outturn against budget, £23,000, and that revenues also are showing a small favourable variance of £25,000. But overall, the total variance is a negative £168,000 overall. So that is something that we will be keeping an eye on, and obviously there will be, as you know, Lesnode is currently working to replace Poundland in the current Queen's Road store, and negotiations are ongoing. Obviously I can't tell you what they are because they're commercially sensitive, but there are a number of discussions going on with a number of possible occupants. Just pausing there, Chair, do you want to take questions as we go along, or is there anything specific that you would like me to deal with in the report? I think largely we're dealing, I would normally do this by exception, only pick up those that are showing like a negative variance or a non-smiley face, but even in some cases the non-smiley faces are actually positive results. It's just that on the trend analysis it's a slightly lower performance than it was in 12 months ago. How do you want to deal with it, Chair?
I think, yes, I think that's quite a good idea. There's that. I think we'll get Mr. Goss to ask his question first, and then I'll bring in the panel to everyone who phonetically or whatever they want to do. Let's go through the report and do it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Goss, got some
Thank you,
questions?
Chair. Yeah. Actually, it does relate to the 23 cost saving on the markets. If you go to the markets page 41, clearly the measure performance is number of market stores higher. If you look at the narrative above in terms of how this 23k has been saved, it talks about, the comment is, transport savings against budget. due to newer vehicles reducing maintenance costs. So I wondered how that flows through to a market consideration. But not only that, it talks about a first quarter outturn of 169,000, which looks a bit odd. You've got a budget number 190, which makes sense. You've got end of year forecast of 96. But there's a number in the middle which is 169, and I just wondered if someone could explain it. 'Cause it implies actually not a cost, but an inflow of nearly 200k.
Mhm. I don't know the specific answer to that. I'm not sure whether any of my colleagues here can answer that question, Chair. We'd have to respond to
Okay.
that. What I can say, in terms of the transport savings, there has been a change in methodology in the way that we service the market in terms of the erection and dismantling of the stalls, and they're now operating, I believe, or will be, from Harefield Road.
Yep.
And
Not
they're
quite yet,
using,
but they will.
but they've changed from HGVs to smaller
Right.
vehicles,
LCV.
which has given us more flexibility because of the rules about HGV drivers and hours and tachographs and things, which has always been a bit of an issue. We've managed to make savings through changes in methodology, if you like. in
Yes,
how we
yeah, I
do it.
understand.
So that's translated through into savings, both I think in terms of fuel, in terms of hours, drivers' hours and things like that. So
No, that explains it, thank you.
And they're cheaper to buy in the first place, so the capital
Yeah.
depreciation each year is less.
But that's fine. And the other point was, if you hit your targets for both markets, 10,000 in Nuneaton, 4,500 in Bedworth for the year, what utilisation is that? Is it about 75% utilisation? I looked at the numbers and I think it's about 75%.
your guess is as good as mine. If that's how it should be an arithmetical outcome. So yes, I would imagine it would be working on 75% occupancy. And in part, Chair, that's because, as you know, market traders, we allow them a period of grace for holidays and time off, etc., for unexpected events, etc., within the calculation. So there's an element of discounting that goes on when we're setting the occupancy rates.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be about 83 or 84%.
Oh, thank you.
Because we've currently got 120 over 150, which is 8%, which is slightly under. So it'll be a bit more than that. So it's a little bit more than 8%. Will be full. Will be the target.
Yes,
What
yeah.
we're at, 82, 83%.
Thanks for your question,
Thank you.
Ross. I
Yeah.
hope that answers it.
It does, thanks.
I will go to the panel now. Does anybody want to say anything on the report? Chris?
Are we still going page by page on this?
I think that'd be the best idea of it.
Okay, if I stick to the one which Phil has just covered about the reduced rental to Poundland, I am concerned about it. I understand the reasons why on balance it was probably the right decision to do, but I'm concerned about the precedent it has set about allowing a council-owned store to be let for £1, because there are other businesses in council-owned properties which, if they were to hit the wall, would the council be as generous as they have been with Poundland? And I think that's an answer which we need to have a definitive policy on, because the leaseholders would deserve to have a rough guide as to the process which is to be followed and what their likelihood is, because why should it be one rule for one, which is a big company which has gone into administration, and potentially another rule for a smaller company which would have a bigger impact on them than on Poundland, for example. So I think we need to clarify this going forward, because otherwise it could put the council in a very difficult position.
Philip?
We're not really in a position, I don't think, to comment on that, Chair. It's something that you could recommend, that there is a policy. My understanding of the analysis that was undertaken was that it was a purely, and you'll have to excuse me when I say this, but it was a purely commercial decision, in the sense that the risk of the Poundland store being vacated was extremely high. And had that occurred, then we would have incurred not just the loss of rental income, but also we would then have been liable for the non-domestic rates as well. And my understanding from having a quick chat with Les Snowden is that the NDR itself is £140,000. So the decision to keep it in occupation was to mitigate the loss of rent. Otherwise, instead of facing a loss of income of £210,000, we'd have faced a loss somewhere in the region of £350,000.
But the point is, would we have done the same for a business that is, say, £50,000 a year? Just because it's a matter of size and scale, I think you still need to have a policy which we adhere to. So I would formally recommend, Chair, that we invite Cabinet to work up a policy about how this is dealt with in future, because businesses need to know which way this council is going to go. If we're only going to do it for businesses with over a commercial rent of £150,000 and not entertain it for ones underneath, then that's the policy of the council. But we need to have, in my view, a policy.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, how many properties does the council own outright, like that one in the town centre?
The answer to that is on page 39,
Cool.
where it says there are 148 commercial premises with 144 being occupied.
What, which are actually owned by the council?
That's
Yes.
that's across the borough as a whole, Phil.
On
Yes,
the
yes.
That's across the borough as a
That's
whole.
all
So
our
that's
commercial
town
But
centres,
you
industrial
haven't
estates, etc., etc.
Split in,
In the numbers for Nuneaton and the numbers for Bedworth. Because I would say there's more properties vacant in Bedworth than there is in Nuneaton.
that's something that I'm sure we could produce from the asset register, because clearly we know where they are. So we can tell you the answer to that question if that's you want the answer.
Oh, that'd be nice to know.
At least we can find that out. Councillor Condicor?
This brings up a whole load of questions, these numbers. Clearly, I do not believe we've only got 4 out of 148 empty. And what has happened in the past is we've looked at the number of empty, say, shops, but put that over the whole number of empty premises. So this could include business units in Attenborough Fields and all sorts of other things. And it seems inconceivable that we've got this few numbers of empties. It may be that actually people are still paying rent or under contracts, where only some of our empties are actually currently being marketed. But I do think we need clarity over what's going on, because it's very easy for people to say, we've only got 4 empty shops, but we've got 148 buildings, therefore we'll do this ratio. It is very unusual for us to have such a low rate of empties, and if we're also renting things out at zero cost, well surely, or near zero cost, £1 a year, clearly if they stop renting, well they've already paid the pound for the year, so we don't detect they're empty. So I think there's a difference between actually which ones are empty and which ones are actively paying rent, if you get my...
I'm not entirely sure I followed the question, but
Between Phil and myself, we're essentially speaking on behalf of Ian and his team, but if the figures are, we've got 144 occupied out of 148 commercial properties, that's what the figures are, in terms of the whole portfolio. And one of the principal reasons we hold a commercial portfolio at all is to generate income. So if the income is being, if the rents are being paid, notwithstanding the fact that we have to, you try and you have to get the rent that you can get for each one, then that's what it's about in many ways. Taking that as Phil said before, that commercial view, it's about what income comes in. But I'd suggest that what we should give is some more information from Les as to, of those 148 commercial properties, how do they break down into the various types of property? Where are they, and what's what? Because in fact, if it was under my control, I could remember where 148 ones were and what they all were. So I think that's the answer, Chair, is to get some info sent out to the panel.
I have got that information from Les, having spoken to him earlier. There are 2 shops in Congreve Walk, 2 offices, and I don't know where they are, and 2 units, I think, at Attleborough. So though that there's actually, he says 6. And he wanted members to know that there is interest currently shown in both the shops at Congreve and in the units. So he's anticipating that those will be let shortly.
Congreve's in Bedworth.
Yes.
Sounds like a councillor wants bigger ones just to bellyache. We've got good figures, we've got 4 that's empty, and everything else is done, and he's bellyaching in it. Why, they're not true figures. I don't think officers put figures on here. You want to, hey, get your political game out of it. We've got, if we've done that, well done. Let's praise them. If they've got 148 here and only 4 short, or 6 has been done, they're doing extremely well.
Chair, if I may.
Let's not look reasons to find out why they should be damn empty.
Councillor Margrave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I wanted to pick up on the point that Brent raised. I was actually going to also ask for a breakdown of our property portfolio, so we understand better where the properties are. And also, I think it's really important to show local residents that while we do have a portfolio of properties, the majority, from my understanding, of properties or shops within the town centre are owned by private companies. So often you'll see vacant shops and the rents will be really high, and local people will be rightly asking, why is our town centre not got more of the shops we want? And we're working as a council to try and get those shops in, but we don't necessarily own the property. And I think it's important to share that information and put it in the public domain. And I think that really picks up on the issue around the £1 rent. While I thought it was very interesting, because we were on different political spectrums, Councillor, and so obviously I take a stronger view that we should have more regulation, and I would like to see a cap on all rents within town centres, because small businesses really struggle to get into town centres and get into retail because of high rents and high business rates. So I welcome the opportunity to offer a low rent, whether it should be £1 or whether it should be a trial period. So it would be interesting to look at a policy, but I think the answer really, in your question, is it's about strong leadership. And I would like to say as an OSP member that I'm really pleased with what the Cabinet have done in order to show strong leadership in keeping jobs and keeping a shop in one of our premises. It would have not only cost us more money, but we would have lost something in the town. And I think that's about strong leadership, taking decisions when they need to be taken, not about us hypothesising about things that potentially could happen. It's about taking the situation as it was and taking some action. So I would like to thank Cabinet for the action they've taken. In relation to Councillor Condacor's comments, there is some confusion clearly now that there are potentially 6 vacant properties, and I would like more details. However, I am really concerned, Councillor, that you said that you don't believe a report that's put to us by officers. Officers work hard in putting forward these reports, and unless you visited all 148 properties, and you know that there are huge numbers that are vacant, or empty as you've said, I would disagree and say that we've got the figures here, and we should be proud of them. We should be proud that we've got such high levels of letting out our properties when other councils are actually finding they've got huge numbers of empty properties within their stock. So I want to thank officers for that. And finally, Chair, if I could just go back to the residents' comments, because I want to thank the officers while at the same time saying the figures that were referenced, while an answer couldn't be given to the resident today, and I'm disappointed an answer couldn't be given, it would be useful if we all got a written copy to that question and that answer, so that we're all aware, because I think it's a really important question about whether money flowed in and has suddenly appeared on the balance sheet and the explanation for that. But I disagree fundamentally, Chair, with Councillor Condacor's comments that there are lots of vacant commercial properties. I think we're really successful in this borough, and it's one of the things that we do really well. And I would like us to expand and buy more property if we can, and to fill that as well. So that's something I'd like to see in the future. So I give my full support to the officers and thank them for their hard work.
Councillor Beaumont.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I was going to refer to the Poundland situation as well, because I do recall reading somewhere, I think it may have been in the press, that the lease which Poundland now have isn't the lease which they had previously. It's actually short term. It leaves the council free to go off and seek new occupants for the building, and at the same time reduces the impact on the cost of running the town centre, because it is supplying business rate, it's producing turnover, footfall, and everything is as good as you can get it, given that a company is going to fall out of existence in the near future. So I think it's probably a good idea, and if other businesses wanted a pound because they're going out, well, maybe they can make the case and change their lease and survive for a little bit longer than they would have otherwise. But I just see it as flexible and quite reasonable thing to do.
Councillor Conde.
Yeah, I was questioning the 148 because obviously I know some shops like the one at Queen's Road have been sold, so I think we've not been keeping track of the bottom of the equation. We've also found out we've got 6 empties and not 4, but walking around we see the ones opposite the library, which I believe are owned by the council, are also empty, but they're empty maybe waiting sale, waiting demolition. So I do think these figures need clarifying, and if we use the word occupied, we have council premises that are not occupied, and we have far more than 4 out of 144. I think the 144 has changed, and we do need clarity on how many we've disposed of. Yeah, the ones at Queen's Road were a typical example of shops that have been empty for almost a decade, opposite where the football club used to be. We definitely have shops empty opposite the library, and so if this equation counts shops that are ready to be disposed of or whatever as occupied, then we need that clarity. But as it looks, we are inflating how well we're doing, and I do think I should be able to challenge the officers if the figures seem implausible and if there are clearly empty shops that are not showing up on the list. It may be perfectly legitimate why they're not on the list, but it needs a note to clarify this does not include shops being made redundant. We need clarity.
Sorry, just one point of clarification. I just want to make this clear that the figures you've got here are measured as of the end of the first quarter of the current year. So it's not as of today. That is the position as it was in June. June. So I think you have to remember that actually this is a backward-looking report in that it is not giving you an up-to-date position. As you've heard, Shirley's given an up-to-date position, which is that there are another 2 properties that have come vacant in that period of time. We can certainly ask the question of Ian and Les in terms of, are there properties that are vacant that are not counted in these figures? We can certainly ask that question. And I honestly don't know the answer. I know the properties that you're referring to over the road there, which are some are still occupied, but are under option with McCarthy and Stone for redevelopment. So whether or not we're discounting those, I do not know. So we'd have to come back on that.
Like others, I welcome this report and just shows you how positive the town centres are, etc. But on the next scrutiny meeting, we have in actual fact got a piece of work going on. Select Committee requests for further work to be undertaken regarding the land that the council holds and the leases in place with a view to increasing income through sale letting. So that's coming up at the next meeting. So there's so everything has been discussed today. You've heard what the panel said. Can we bring that forward to that meeting and let's go through it a bit more in the rather than trying to get the
And you will have Les Snowden, President Chair, who will be able to give you chapter and verse on all the council's land building, commercial land building.
The committee happy with the panel? We're happy with that, yeah?
Yeah.
We'll do that then. Okay.
Really?
That's page 39. I'll go through the pages one at a time. 40, 41.
Thank you, Chair. On page 41, market stalls hired Nuneaton and a comparison with Bedworth, I'm concerned that yet again we have lost 78 this quarter compared to the first quarter of the previous financial year, and this it seems to be an ongoing trend. I think it would be useful going forward, Chair, if we were able to have some trend information like we have later on in the report, where it goes on about car parking, where it provides the position for the first quarters of the past 4 financial years. I think that would be interesting, and for members to see where the position has been. If we're doing it for car parking, I don't see why there couldn't be the similar information for town centre stalls. It's pleasing to see that Bedworth is actually up against target, but I think that might have something to do with the fact that their market rates are less than a quarter of the market rates in Nuneaton town centre.
Any member of the panel?
It's fairly obvious why Bedworth is cheaper. A, because they don't have to cart the stalls in and put them up and take the stalls down and clean down afterwards.
That's one of the benefits. Anybody else in that? Yeah, nothing. 42, 43, 44, 45.
Chair, sorry. In relation to the collection of business rates, obviously we're looking at this through a prism of our current position, but when we're looking at trend, obviously with the government's finance bill not going forward, and therefore not collecting 100% of business rates in the future, where do we sit with the trend in relation to collection? Because obviously we're still collecting, but going forward we're not going to collect as much as we thought we were going to collect, but potentially we could be collecting high levels, but it's still going to be reduced income. So I just wondered what consideration had been made about potentially lost income stream from us not being able to retain business rates.
I understood from what was said at the meeting, the council meeting, that Warwickshire were looking at providing the pot, as you might say, for business rates to be shared out amongst the people, because there are rural areas in the south of Warwickshire, and of course there's business people here in places like North Warwickshire and the Borough that provide business rates. But perhaps the officers could help us on that.
I think what I was just looking at was the trend, really. It was more about the reflection in the trend. Because obviously there's a risk implied there, and if we didn't raise that.
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, Chair. My understanding is that we are still as we were in terms of business rates. So the retention of business rates hasn't changed because the primary legislation hasn't been passed. But we will just carry on as we are. But what we will have lost is the pooling element. So we're slightly more exposed to that in that respect. But as long as collection rates, as long as we are collecting what we're obliged to collect, I don't think, whilst there's a risk, and I'm assuming that this is a risk that will be, if not on the risk register, will go onto the risk register, the intention would be that we will get to a point where the primary legislation will be passed. That's my assumption.
I hope so. Councillor Condivar.
Pooling is really important because, particularly for a small borough, adding one large business or taking away one business actually makes a massive difference. Whereas if you pull 6 or 7 councils together, all those pluses and gains average out a bit, and although you might gain a bit or lose a bit, you're nowhere near as exposed. So I'm a bit worried you're saying we might be losing the pooling, so it'd be good to get clarity on that. But also, there is a point about Coventry going into the combined authority and what's going to happen going forward with the pool, which could also be a major risk.
Well, sorry, Chair, just to be clear, is the fact that Coventry are having to go into West Midlands Combined Authority that's the issue, as I understand it. So my understanding is that we will be looking at I think as Councillor Haynes said, a more local pool, but we lose the benefit of Coventry being a large urban metropolitan council. So clearly that makes the pool more or less robust than it would otherwise be.
Any other questions? Yeah, watch with 46. Councillor?
I think Councillor Brindley was first.
No, I just give you a hand first.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Yet again, I'm disappointed in the figures which are before us. As I said at full council, as I have said in this OSP as well, the increase in the car parking ticket sales would have a detrimental impact on sales and therefore on the amount of income coming into the council. We have now had 1 full year plus 1 quarter's worth to be able to compare with the increase in car parking charges. So we are actually, according to these figures, which are quite useful to see the comparison from 14-15 to 17, £60,000 down compared to 14-15. But more importantly, since the increase in the car parking charges, so we can compare like with like, we are down £50,000 in the first quarter compared to the last full quarter. And I think that's very worrying, something that Cabinet need to address urgently, because they've been warned and it isn't changing, the circumstances are getting worse, and we will be on course yet again for another £250,000 loss on car parking income on current trajectory. It's there in black and white, again.
Any officers wish to comment? Or?
Well, comments there for us. It says, since changing network provider, it has not been possible to provide accurate data on ticket sales. So what you've got in front of you is not accurate.
But the amount that you've received in income is, that's why they provided the income figures.
Councillor Brindley?
I just wanted to pick up on a similar point to Councillor Haynes actually. It concerns me a little bit that the data that we're getting isn't accurate, and there's a very cynical part of me that wonders if actually it might be in our interest for this data to not be accurate, because it's not showing a particularly rosy picture. And I agree with all of the points that Councillor Wilson has made, that the trend there speaks for itself, and I think this is something that we need to be looking at urgently.
Councillor Condicor?
Accurate data is really important, and one of the things we get from the telemetric data from ticket sales and the amount of cash raised is we're getting a clear audit trail. So I'm very concerned. This has been going on over a year since I've changed the car park over. Yeah, you understand the first quarter you can have data issues, but to go a year and a quarter without being able to get a SIM card to send data over a modem is extraordinary.
Councillor Margaret?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, ever since we simplified our KPIs, I found it quite difficult because I'm much more of a detail guy and I like more detail. And what I feel that we're not properly reflecting here is actually there are costs. If we were to benchmark ourselves with other authorities, we've got costs such as CCTV that we provide. And there are other costs about maintaining our car parks and the services that we provide, entertainment in the town centre, etc., which is all relation to town centre management. And I just wonder whether there's a potential in future reports to reflect that, so that you can see what's raised from car parking and actually what it's invested into, because there's a lot that it's invested into. And then we could maybe measure that against other local authorities and what they're doing. And then we could have a proper debate, I think, about car parking, because other councillors or some councillors often say, let's just have free car parking. But what would free car parking mean? And I think also another issue around reduced income levels, there are other external reasons for a reduction in car parking revenue, whether it's people choosing not to park in town centres and get a bus or walking, which I'm sure is something Councillor Condacall would love to see everybody get rid of their car. So in reality, I think there are lots of external factors that feed into this. And I think we need more information if we're going to try and debate it. Because I think just to say that car parking's down and we're losing money isn't the full story. And I think there's a bigger picture there that maybe we need to look at. And whether we do that here or in full council is another debate. But I would like to see the figures reflected more fully, so that at least residents who come along or read these reports externally can see fully where the money raised from car parking and on our town centres is going. Because there's so much more going on in the town centres that we should really be celebrating and that we should really be proud of.
Any officers with any comments?
Just observation, Chair, that the reason this OSP gets car parking figures is as a proxy measure for town centre footfall. The Planning and Environment OSP is the prime OSP for car parking scrutiny. But because of issues with the footfall figures that we had, it was really just footfall counted via the road walk sensors at the two in and outs. There. So that's where it comes in. So just picking up on Councillor Margot's point that it's looking at one very small thing in terms of the whole of the town centre management and the what happens in our town centres. And so it probably would be more helpful to have more than one measure of what is happening in the whole of the town centres. I suppose the trick is, though, is what other measures do you have and which are the appropriate ones. My understanding when the town centre Wi-Fi goes live is that will give us a lot more data on who's walking past what point and picks up on their phones, and I don't really understand it, but I'm telling you, much clearer picture of movements, and so that would seem to, in the very near future, offer probably a better measure of town centre vitality and people coming in, when do they come in, where do they go, which bits of the town do they go to and not go to. Is probably being from the economic aspect of this scrutiny panel's remit would probably seem to me to make more sense for that to form part of the wider picture of the town centres than the car parking tickets and income. That's just an observation, Chair, that's probably a better, will offer in the relatively near future a better way of getting a picture of what is happening in the town centres as economic entities.
So where does the panel want us to go from here then? Do you ask for further information from Councillor Condacall?
I think we should ask for the data, the reason why the thing hadn't been fixed, to give us car parking data from the Bedworth Road. Because that does need fixing.
Yeah. Councillor Beaumont?
Chairman, yeah, it does indicate that they are pursuing a resolution with the provider of the information, and I would suggest we have another report when that's available. If I just look at the numbers for 2016-17 and 17-18 on that first quarter performance, and I divide the money by the number of tickets for 2016-17, I'll get about £1.50. If I divide then the 17-18, 4,444,760 by the number of tickets again, it becomes 180, which indicates the amount of money per ticket has gone up by a considerable amount. Now, I don't quite understand why that would be, but it shows each ticket issued is carrying more value than it was in the previous year for the same quarter, which means, I think, that the increase in price has yielded some result which goes against the trend of falling ticket sales. So that I think it is more complex than we should assume it to be, and that the headline figure of how much cash collected masks other movements
other trends which are pretty well downward, we know that, in town centres. And also the shift that we've had in car parking to create more opportunity for the nighttime economy has had its impact as well. So I think it is far more complex than that. But I think there is more information to come, as indicated in the narrative, and we should wait for that.
So the panel's recommendation is that we wait for the further information and see if we can get a wee bit more clarity, rather than just try to pick figures up the area. Okay.
Can I just say, Chairman, I can recall on this committee we received reports where officers have explored the issue of price against turnover and so on, and they've always come back, as far as I can remember, with the opinion that price and turnover is not the same thing. You know, you don't sell more tickets or less simply on the basis of price. It depends on how vibrant and attractive your town centre is, for a start. And all the trends, I think, have been against our town centre and creating great difficulties for us maintaining that footfall which the officers have referred to.
Let's get further information then, yeah. Page 47. 48. 49. 50. 51.
Chair.
Number 24.
Although it's not in the remit of this committee borough plan, it does have a knock-on to the economic viability of the town. And today the planning inspector, looking at the Nuneaton Borough plan, has sent a letter to the council, which the council is representing as a go-ahead on the plan to the next phase. That does seem to be rather a misrepresentation of the situation, because he's talking about the borough plan, the council providing him a briefing paper for November, which is really a borough plan going slower than expected. So I think it will have an impact on the risk that the borough plan isn't racing ahead. What he's doing is saying, I need another topic paper from the council.
We should wait and see what happens with that then, yeah?
Sorry, Chair, I need to just correct that, because what the inspector actually says is my intention is that the examination should now move on to the stage 2 hearings.
Get your facts right then.
So it's on track then. Councillor Maggrave.
I was going to raise this point as well, but I thought I'd wait for Councillor Condacore to raise it first. I thought it'd be more accurate. Because it's going to stage 2, and obviously I welcome the letter actually said that we had cooperated properly with our neighbouring authorities. Does that now reduce the risk within this register, or does it retain, maintain at this level? Just as a committee that we're considering in relation to the risk register.
In terms of the overall risk, Chair, I don't think it will affect it until such time as we've got the final.
And in providing obviously we're going to stage 2, but in providing further information, we do have capacity within the authority to do that. There's no risk.
Yes, Chair. There's that was part and parcel of the internal discussions before this letter was issued, was what would be required to by the inspector and whether we could meet that requirement within the stipulated time frame, and we've taken the view that we can achieve that. Just to be clear, Chair, the first stage of the examination is the legal test of whether we've satisfied the duty to cooperate, which is a pass-fail test. So what the inspector is saying is that we've passed that, which means we can now move on to the more detailed assessment on the more site-specific issues. The inspector has asked, and it's quite right that he does so, because one of the tests that, or one of the considerations he now needs to consider is the soundness of the plan and how well it hangs together. He's asked for some more information in terms of the allocations, the decisions to release land from the green belt, and things like that. So basically he wants a topic paper that addresses those issues as part of that, and that will be examined at stage 2.
Councillor Condicott?
I'll make it clear again, what the inspector's asking for is a topic paper by November. The inquiry was supposed to restart in October, so what I'm saying is we have more delay. I'm not whether it's going ahead or not as a borough plan, but the borough plan has been hit by more delay in producing these new topic papers.
Yeah, well, just to be clear, Chair, the inspector did say that because of the additional work that he wanted us to do, that it wouldn't be possible to do that. So we've agreed with him that we will start stage 2 hearings on the 16th of January.
So this was the inspector's decision to do this rather than finding us.
We are in the hands of the inspector.
Yeah.
He runs this exam.
As I said, we'll wait and see what the outcome is then in the not too distant future. 52. 53.
Chair.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chair. I have some concerns about the mitigation control and sources of assurance for this risk register entry. It says as mitigation control that one of the controls will be the £200,000 budget to improve town centres. According to the last set of papers which went to full council, there's £150,000 left in that particular capital pot. That pot was set up over a year ago, and we were promised by Cabinet that we would have a more in-depth exposition as to what that £200,000 would be spent on. I understand the first chunk was spent on the aforementioned town centre Wi-Fi, but I think for good monitoring purposes it should be set out to us by Cabinet, all the officers, whoever, I don't particularly care as long as we get an answer, what the remainder of that £150,000 earmarked for, or projects you are looking at earmarking that for. And also on the sources of assurance, what about these minutes of the combined authority, minutes of the LEP, etc. If those minutes are meant to assure elected members, it might be useful if they are put in a central place or emailed out to elected members, or a link to them on our website so we can find them. I know that there is a link on the bottom of the Council's website to the West Midlands Combined Authority webpage, but not to the actual sources of the minutes, and they keep seeming to move around, or they moved around in the past 2 months on the Combined Authority webpage. It might be more useful if we could put them directly on our website, or a link direct to those minutes on our website, to assist members and members of the public to do that. Because when you try and get the Combined Authority ones, for example, you have to go through a couple of other pages which aren't always obvious because they've moved again.
no problem. Councillor Margrave.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a particular interest in this area because my PhD focuses on devolution and how we can make high streets vibrant again and create jobs and create strong economic ecosystems. So I'm interested in the mitigation because I share some of Councillor Wilson's observations about it would be useful for us to have minutes because these are sources of assurance. But actually I've got concerns really around, and while I know that there are some members who attend the Combined Authority, when it comes to the LEP and our involvement as a committee with the LEP and holding LEPs to account, the Federation of Small Businesses has highlighted they've got real concerns about accountability and democracy within LEPs and with local communities, and local communities having a say on what money's spent on and where the money's invested. And obviously Coventry and Warwick is a big area, and I would argue that often the south of the county gets more than its fair share and we don't. So what I'd like to see, Chair, on here, on mitigation, is actually us as a committee, and also the Cabinet, but us as a committee playing a role in maybe having the LEP, or having LEPs and others, present to us and undergo some scrutiny. Because I think that's a really important part of the democratic process, is in us holding their plans to account. So we can see what they've got planned and put forward ideas. Because I think we've got a really important role in about economic development of our town centres and our borough. That's our role as a committee. So obviously we're not in the list, but I just wondered whether that had been considered, because a lot of these mitigations are external and we've got no control over them, and there's no relationship between the control and us, and that concerns me.
Concerns everybody. Any answers from the officers? I shall be speaking to the to the West Midlands Combined Authority later on, and so if we want to take it up there, I think that might be probably the best bit.
I'm more than happy to, Chair. I just, maybe for a future meeting, we could look at good practice and what other authorities are doing, maybe to engage with LEPs. Because ordinary members of the council, ordinary backbench members, don't tend to engage with the LEP, really. I don't think I've ever seen a copy of LEP minutes that I'm aware of. Well, not in my role as a councillor. I've read hundreds of LEP minutes in other roles. And I just think it'd be useful for us to engage and have a dialogue with that whole devolution agenda.
I understand the leaders on the LEP, and if I can just, I'm not saying ignore it to the present moment, but we'll be discussing, I'm going to do our report back. I said a briefing note from the chair, and as you see in the minutes on page 92, this is the suggestions that I am actually making on behalf of this. So I might answer some of the questions then, if everybody's quite happy to deal with that then. Yeah. Anything else? 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70. Yeah.
There's a few things on here about disposals of things and relocating depots and things, and Bedworth Cricket Club. These things always seem to be on here. Is there anything we need to note about in terms of progress?
Sorry, Chair. We've actually got a report on the Asset Management Action Plan update report on the agenda, which these will be part of that. Apart from what I can say with the well, yeah, it's on that report.
Okay.
Just to say, Chairman, obviously all of these things are fluid in the sense that they're all ongoing. The reason they're amber and not something is happening. So just to pick one example off that list, because this is as of end of June. You'll see that, for example, we've got relocate, the second bullet point, relocate the operation from St Mary's Road Depot. Now, my understanding is that we're just about there, I think, with relocating operations. So it will get to where it needs to be. But as of that particular point in time, that's where we were. So, yes, they are progressing, but this is just saying where we were at the end of June. So the next report,
where we were at the end of last week.
Yeah.
So we'll deal with some of that under the item number 9 then. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's 9, Chair.
Yeah. 71. Councillor,
Just in relation to the freedom of information, have we moved on to that, Chair?
No, not yet. We're still use. Oh, that's it. Sorry. So we're actually moved on to item number. No, sorry, got it. Yeah. Right, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the freedom of information requests, and this is a really important piece of legislation that provides transparency as a local authority, and it gives people the right to request information. And obviously, it's kind of a last resort, really, because we're quite a friendly authority where people can just phone us up or write to us and we need to give them information. So I'm a bit concerned that there are some delays in a number of our requests, and even in the high figures, it's 60 to even up to 80 plus days. So I wondered what we were doing to resolve that, because we are, by law, meant to respond within 20 days. It is that we can extend that, but I don't understand some of the reasons given. For example, there's one here with 86 days, but it says that more information is required. Is that more information from the applicant or more information from us or internally? So, but there are others in here that are in 50 or 30 or... and I think there is a huge risk to us as an authority in handling these. So I just want to be confident that we are dealing with it.
Yeah, I'll just take that, Chair. This is actually the old system. We've gone live with the new system, as they may be aware, from the 1st of September. Although the FOIs haven't been affected as much with the new system. The status, where it says more information required, is us going back to the person who's asked, saying, if you want that information, we need X, Y, and Z, or do you want this, or do you want that? In terms of the length of time, we will have responded within the 20 days and asked for more information, and often they don't come back. And they don't come back because there are people who just, lots of suppliers ask for information and just send a generic email. And so if they don't come back, it sits there until we say, you know what, we'll just close that. So in terms of how many there are, although it actually is higher than the 20 days, we have definitely responded in some form or other before the 20 days.
So
I'm not saying we're completely perfect. There will be one or two that don't get a response. As I say, there are an awful lot of generic, just sending them to authorities blindly. Really.
Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you, Chair. I think it would be useful going forward if on both this report and on the complaint, where it says total of 36, if we could have it, how many is that out of? So you've got 36 which are out of target, but then it would be nice to know how many you've actually received in that period. So we could say, oh, you're actually 50% in target, you're 70% in target, you're 10% in target, and then we know whether to applaud you or to tell you off. But I am concerned, there are 4 entries on here which I'm concerned about, because based on what you've said in the past about how these things work, about waiting for people to allocate them and take responsibility for them, there are 4 on this report which I've seen for freedom of information, the waiting allocation, and one of those is 67 days.
Yes.
So what are we doing to address this? I assume it's a performance issue with members of staff. So what are we doing to address this lack of performance by members of staff?
We certainly chase for responses. In a lot of cases, I'll refer back to what I said, it is a generic supplier has asked for some information, and often they're not chasing for an answer. It's a blanket.
The ones I'm on about are specifically awaiting allocation, so no one's yet taken ownership of them.
No, because they're probably a scattergun general inquiry across the whole organisation. So what we need to be doing, and with the new system we should be doing, hopefully, is those ones will get an alert sent to all escalated people, so that they're actually, somebody needs to own this FOI. Customer services check on a lot of them, although I have to say they concentrate more on the complaints than they do on the FOIs.
Thank you, Chair.
Everybody happy with that? Yeah. We'll go over 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76. Okay. Thanks for that. And now we go back to agenda item number 6, which is on page 14.
Excuse me. I can't speak, but I rung this lady up, Wendy Bolton, earlier today and said I had 2 questions to ask. I've told her which section the questions related to. I'll ask one question. I've tried to ask the other one and I'm not being allowed to. So what is the process?
I was only informed that you wanted to speak on one subject.
No, on item number 8, on two subjects.
On item number 8, that's
Yeah,
what I
two
was...
subjects. If Wendy Bolton didn't give the message, then perhaps she needs to have a look at what she does.
Oh, so you wanted to make... I'm just getting clarification here, Mr. Goss. I'm not trying to...
No, that's fine.
trying to keep you quiet or anything. But you said you wanted to make a question on the risk.
Yes.
The risk assessment?
Yes.
And we can do that, because I was under the opinion that you only had one question rather than two. So
No, it's page 61. Risk reference R11, NABSAL.
what's your question then, Mr.
Well, I'll start with the mitigation control existing stroke ongoing. Item 3 talks about each new business activity for NABSAL supported by a robust business case must be approved by both council and NABSAL. Well, knowing who the people are in NABSAL, council leaders, maybe the opposition, senior council officers, to me they're one and the same. NABSAL are the council. So my first question was, are you satisfied with true independent review or input into item 3 in terms of making those decisions? The next question is the status, which is green. I've got the accounts, but can I really determine where NABSAL's at? The answer is no, I can't. And perhaps that's because I don't understand it enough, and other people can tell me or give me some clear accounts, or perhaps I ask through Freedom of Information Act. But if you just look at some high-level numbers, I know for 16-17 the income was £105,000. In 2017-18 it's forecast that NABSAL will turn over £300,000. But whether that's what's profit or whatever, certainly turnover is not profit. And finally, if I look at where NABSAL stands, NABSAL is a debtor to the council. In 2015-16 accounts are debtors to the tune of 30,000. 16 and 17 accounts, they're now debtors to the tune of 92,000. So the debt's trebled. So my question is, are you still happy that this risk status is green? Thank you.
Who's the best one to answer this then?
Simone. There is, if you go, Chair, to page 49, you'll see that there is the risk level indicator matrix and descriptors.
Yes.
And you've got, obviously, if we look, and what we have here is the abridged version, not the full version, so you haven't got the gross risk and then the net risk. But if you look at the table, so you've got the, if you like, the likelihood of something happening, and then we have the, on page 50, the impact.
Yes. Yes.
So you will see that you've got a low or moderate risk depending on the financial risk. So if you take it that the risk of financial loss is between, say, 50 and 199k, then you're talking about a moderate risk, which is an impact of 2. So if we're saying that the likelihood of something happening in the next 3 years is low, which is, if you go back to the table on page 49, that would put it in that box number 2 there, which I appreciate you can't tell from a black and white version, is actually green, which is how it would have been arrived at. Whether that, and I think your question is very valid, is pertinent, whether that will continue to be green or whether it will then move to amber, which would be the one above it, would be determined at the next review. We do a quarterly review of the risk matrix, and clearly as NABSAL grows, and it is growing, I think it's fair to say, and it is developing, it's increasing its property portfolio, which is why it's showing a larger income target than it did last year.
Yes.
The risks will increase with it. So when we do the review next time round, it is conceivable that that will change from green to amber. But as I say, I've said Simone, I know Chris is on the board, but Simone will look at this with Dawn, with our performance officer, and they will judge the likelihood of it and the financial consequences of favouring that. Obviously, you'd be talking, to get it into amber, you'd have to have a complete failure of NABSEL, based on the figures that you're talking about.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm sure Phil will try and kick me if I say something out of turn, bearing in mind commercial sensitivity, etc. Each business activity for NABSEL is supported by a robust business case. Having said that, there's only been one business case, there's only really one model that NABSEL is operating under at the moment, based on its size. There have been suggestions about other business models, but they haven't yet come to fruition or gone before the board to either say yay or nay. They must be both approved by the council and the NABSEL board. Some are one and the same, some aren't. For example, the decision to give some things resides with the cabinet originally. I most definitely am not on the cabinet, so I don't have a veto of it from the council side. There are appropriate policies and procedures in place. We are expanding and now getting to the point where NABSEL is looking at taking on people, hiring people in its own right, so there is potential for it to escalate, but we've copied more or less the policies from the council in regards to employment rights, holiday rights, etc., as a source of mitigation to ensure that we are compliant. I know that some of the issues surrounding, without having a copy of the accounts in front of me, I'm going on memory, but some of it was also to do with timing of the accounts being prepared and when it comes into the council. So at one point it does show NABSEL as being a debtor to the council, but then some parts then move over later on in the year. That's from memory and not having seen the most recent statement of accounts from NABSEL. But some of it is literally down to timing and the economic cycle of NABSEL and the council.
Councillor Margrave.
Thank you, Chair. I think that Mr. Goss makes some really important observations, actually. First of all, that I don't want us to miss is this issue of whether the board who lead a company have the right skill set. I've got an issue that there aren't backbench councillors on there, for example, and it's not got that diversity. But actually, if you take a local government corporation away from council leadership, there is a question about business leadership and independent advice. So obviously we've got internal officers, but do we have the specialist skills within the risk register? And I don't think we as a committee need a report back, but I would like officers to also consider about who sits on the board going forward, and whether we've got the breadth of skill and diversity and commercial experience, for example. And this is a question that all local authorities are really grappling with as they move into developing organisations to run portfolios. The problem is, if we were to have an entirely independent board, we may find ourselves in a situation that we found ourselves with Nuneaton and Bedworth Leisure Trust, where they weren't spending necessarily the money on equipment that they were getting in. They retained big reserves, and now they're an independent business working on their own. So I think you've got to be very careful, and I think it's really important when you're dealing with taxpayers' money to have accountability. So that's why I think that we've got those members that we've got, but I think you make a valid point too.
Brent.
Just want to make a couple of points really, and first is, and I make this point as an officer who was involved in running DSOs and DLOs for 10 years. Make no mistake, running a DLO or a DSO is the same as running a private sector company. You have to look at cash flow, profitability, costs, income. Dawn Dawson has done the same thing. So let's just not, let's not pretend that just because we choose to work for local government, officers do not have commercial skills, because we do. And personally, I get a bit fed up about hearing the private sector is the best at everything. But nevertheless, that point there is that Paul Dawson also has experience and skills in running DSOs and DLOs. Second point is, Simone Hines, who sits on there, is a fully qualified accountant who happens to do a pretty good job of running the council's accounts. So I think we can't be saying she's not professionally qualified to do that. Thirdly, though, that the accounts for NABCEL are prepared by an external company. So there is an independence there of an external company having to comply with their professional requirements to prepare those accounts in a timely and accurate and professional manner. So I just think members should be aware of those facts in terms of what NABCEL does and how it is run.
Councillor Caldecott.
At the moment, NABCEL seems to be really very much a buy-to-let type of arrangement, and that obviously carries great potential for profit, but also great potential for capital loss on the value of the assets or capital gains, depending on what happens in the housing market. It would be really useful to have clarity as to where the value of the assets sits, whether it's actually on the council's books.
Council owns the assets and leases them to NABCEL.
Yeah, so NABCEL is then effectively a low risk because it's actually the council taking the risk on the changing property values of what it has acquired.
Yeah. Yeah, that clarified.
Thank you. No, thank you.
My apologies for that.
No problem. Thank you.
Agenda item number 6. Russ, are you taking that?
Yes, thank you. Thankfully, it's a relatively short report in comparison to that one. So it just covers and details our sickness performance for the last year in comparison to years before. So there's a few things to draw your attention to. So it does detail in the appendices that sickness absence statistical data for the last few years, outturn for last year, and some of the initiatives used by the council over the last few years and going forward in an effort to reduce absence and support staffing work. Most notably, we've recently reviewed our attendance management policy, taking into consideration that last year's absence there was a switching trend towards long-term absence rather than short-term. So we've now, in future reports to the panel, there will be more of a breakdown in terms of short-term and long-term absence because we have two targets now, one for short-term, one for long-term. And early indications, which you can see on page 69 in the performance report, is that that's having a positive impact. So our absence is reducing because we have more of an emphasis on long-term absence, managing people back into work sooner. That's really it.
Any questions from the panel? Councillor Caldecott.
One of the areas I have some dealings with is our housing officers, and they do an absolutely brilliant job in very difficult circumstances. And obviously, dealing with the public is a very more stressful job than I think a lot of people realise. And one of the issues with stress in that is overwork. And we keep reporting to the council how good we are because we've underspent on various budgets. But I don't know if that's then having a knock-on if we're short-staffed and have difficulty recruiting. So I don't know if there's a piece of work in here with the stress levels as to whether any of it's related to short-term staffing issues, because you end up with a downward spiral if you're not careful. You haven't quite got enough housing officers, they've got a difficult job, and then the few housing officers you have got are then trying to do more and have more people asking them. So I don't know if the staffing issues are tied in. You do a graph of stress against staffing issues.
Yeah, I mean, our approach to stress is obviously to be as proactive as possible with it. So we do have a corporate stress risk assessment approach to try and identify those stresses. In terms of absence, if somebody does go off with stress, then we intervene very quickly. We have a stress risk assessment with them. We assess whether it is workload. Quite often, in my experience, it's actually a combination of personal and workload. And obviously, the support is there. We refer to counselling. we refer to occupational health as early as possible. It's all about early intervention health policy.
Councillor?
But my point I was trying to make is some of the problem isn't a problem with the person, it's a problem that we've actually got 5 people trying to do 7 people's job, and we do need to try and escalate some of the mannings issues to try and keep the stress levels manageable.
We did do a stress audit council-wide last year, which we didn't have a massive outturn on that, but that covers several areas of the main stressors, including work-life demand, control over your own workload, which covers those issues in terms of staffing, and actually it didn't give us that information. Although we recognise obviously workload is reduced, which can be stressful, actually that isn't the main stressor, it's more personal related.
Just to add to that as well, and Councillor Condor is absolutely right that you've got to make sure you've got your workload and your staffing in balance. The lean system reviews that we've done, which have really focused on do what is actually important and don't do stuff that doesn't add any value. It means that you're making sure that your staff are doing what they need to do, not what someone might want them to do. And that's been extremely helpful in getting that balance right, or as right as you can. There are obviously peaks and troughs on it. That's inevitable, and to some extent, a little bit of stress on occasions is good for you because it focuses the mind. But excess stress over a long period of time is not good for anyone. But those lean system reviews and stripping out so we do what we need to do and not the flowery stuff have been extremely helpful.
Quite remarkable, Sharon. I was coming in a car factory for donkey's use, and they are a different rule to outside here, I can assure you. And it puzzles me that suddenly we changed to stress and got rid of the backache.
Well, actually, this
You
year,
know,
the trend's reversed again. It is back
Because
to
you've been in the industry and whatever, 90% of people don't, it was backache. And suddenly they conquered that, and nobody could do it for the backache, the doctors were struggling, whatever. And suddenly we turned over to stress. There is stress, there's no question of stress in some people's work, but it puzzles me how stressful some of it comes out. But if people are ill, they're ill, and they don't, but I wonder what the next one will be. Because back's gone, stress is next. I don't know what next will be the best one. Because it puzzles me. If you put 3 screws in something, how stressful it is. And you know, it just, sorry, you go to work, you know, everybody wants a job. You go to work, put 3 screws in a board, and suddenly you're stressful. I want a couple of days off, it just puzzles me. But that's life, that's democracy, the freedom of doing whatever you want.
Councillor Margrave.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this report. I do think, I know that I'm asking for detail again, and it might be outside of this room, but it'd be useful to know more about the figures, especially a gender split amongst our staff members and colleagues, to see whether there's any particular issues that you can maybe share potentially outside of this meeting. What I'd like to ask is, first of all, is about morale within the organisation. I mean, you look at other authorities, in Birmingham for one, you know, there's lots of things going on in Birmingham, and we haven't really got that here. And I just wonder what the sense on the ground was for our colleagues. And, you know, how people are feeling, how the staff are feeling, because that obviously has an impact on whether there is sickness or not. I also wonder how we as elected members can celebrate the work that council staff are doing, and I'm sure that Cabinet and the Leader and others are doing something. We've all got a part to share, and I know that our staff are working really hard to, it's almost like we're a family at Nuneaton and Bedworth. I always think of us a bit like a family, and everybody putting in all of their effort and working extra hard because we haven't got the money, and it's really hard. So I just wondered how people are feeling and what we can do to celebrate people, and I hope finally, Chair, that we will note that these are good figures. You know, looking at past years, there are some good stories in here, but actually we value all of our staff, and I think that's really important to send a positive message back. And hopefully people will enjoy a bit of sunlight in their new offices and new comfy chairs, and don't know, working from home in the pyjamas. I'm sure nobody's doing that with agile working, but I do. But I think all these changes that we're having, hopefully we'll see some of the positive benefits come through in the future.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question about the stress figures. Does that also include mental health, or is it specifically stress?
It does. It includes stress, anxiety and mental health, but not depression, which is obviously entirely different.
So, because I have personal experience of this, how bad is the depressive side of the sick absence?
From memory, not that bad at all. We've had a couple of periods of long-term absence. I mean, it's worth noting that, I mean, I can get whatever figures you like. I'm all for a pretty cut chart. So, but it's worth noting that actually almost 80% of staff have had no absence over the last year at all, and a lot of this absence is long-term absence, with about 2 occasions that were due to depression. And obviously depression tends to be long-term. So.
Councillor Lloyd.
Yeah, I mean, you look round, you see the people are working hard. We know they're all working extremely hard right the way through the system, the authority. We're small, because you see down the road Birmingham having to go into court and having to fight and do whatever. Touch wood, we're in trying to be in a total different. But I always think, you know, budget time, and you think of your Labour, and they know we're cuts, they know it's all been cut back. We ain't telling them, it's everywhere. And you sit there and you wonder, will I have a job after the budget this time? What are they going to cut? Have they got the money? So that's where the stress comes in, whether you've got a family, you've got a mortgage, you've got all the rest. And does the council have the money to keep me here? Or is it my department that's got to take the hit? You know, and that's the situation. The officers have got a monster problem trying to put budgets together, and everybody in the council have. Well, all councils are struggling to meet. I thought with the Prime Minister we got now and the way she was talking, we were going to ease just a little. But it's a Tory, so you ain't going to. Sorry about being political. It ain't going to change.
Councillor.
Yeah, I think this issue of stress is an interesting one, because it's something that we're seeing a huge increase of in schools as well. Like the amount of students now that are saying they can't come into school because they're stressed, they can't sit their exams because they're stressed, they need to be in a separate room because they're stressed. And it's a very subjective thing. It's not like it's a medical condition that has a specific diagnosis, and what one person might find quite stressful, other people might be able to cope with fine. And I think part of it is actually about building coping strategies into people as well, and building resilience. I also thought it was interesting that you said, was it 80% of people haven't had a day off?
More or less.
Yeah, and I think about celebrating that as well, and making sure that actually those people that aren't taking time off are being recognised in some way, and sort of thinking about the positive reinforcement as opposed to those people that are having days off is a really positive way forward as well.
Brian.
Just to make a few comments really, and I know I sit as a director, so I'm not on the shop floor, so I've got to take it with a pinch of salt, but I think, by and large, the vast majority of people like working for this council and think it's a good place to work. We've got some people who whinge about everything. They probably whinge about everything else in life.
Sorry about that.
And you've always got some of those in the
I thought you hadn't noticed.
so the vast majority do that. I think Councillor Lloyd is very astute in what he's saying. I think the bit that concerns them most is, I like working for the council, am I still going to be able to work? I like the job I've got, am I still going to have a good job? That's inevitable, isn't it, I think? So that's it. I think from the human side and the softer element of the transfer of our workforce from St Mary's Road Depot to Gresham Road Depot, I think the vast majority of people are very pleasantly surprised about the quality of accommodation they have got down there and the quality of the depot they have gone to compared to where they've come from, because it's loads better. And I think they have recognised that is genuinely an investment by the council in its workforce. And the workforce that you know, and it's interesting because I've used this term for years, that the workforce down the depot as opposed to the workforce up the depot. Down and up have connotations, don't they? So I think that has gone down extremely well and helped morale, because they have seen it as a boost to them. And then the other thing to say is that, yeah, we've got loads and loads of employees who don't take any time off, sick, ill. And myself and the other directors write to those every year. We tend to do it different. Some of us do it on a calendar year and some of us do it on the financial year. Anyway, if you've not had time off in 12 months, we write to them. And I forgot to, well, I didn't forget someone this year. There was someone who didn't come up on the list, and she was extremely perturbed she didn't come up on the list, and phoned me up and frankly said, where the bloody hell's my letter? Now, I think it was, not the fact she put the fear of God into me, the other thing is that I think that's a very positive thing, because she must value the fact that she then hadn't got the letter. So you don't complain about something if you don't care about it. Yeah? So I think that's pretty positive as well. And so the last thing I'd say is that, and I've been doing that probably for 15 years, and there are some names that I've written to every year. So it's not just that we got 8% of people who've not had sickness in the last 12 months. Probably 50% of that 8% haven't had any sickness in the last 10 years or 15 years. And that in itself is something that's pretty good. So yeah, it's not perfect. I'd be lying if I said it was perfect. And I think Councillor Lloyd is absolutely right that when people are thinking, can the council afford to keep me my job, is the biggest. But you know, that we're not alone there, are we? Asda have just made a lot of people, make a lot of people redundant at their head office, aren't they? So the private sector does this, and announcements are there, and people will always have that anxiety. Can I keep on? The education sector is not is facing very, very similar things. So that is an issue, but I think generally speaking, it's a pretty good place to work. Most people are happy to be here.
Yeah, we're quick to criticise, but we never really praise the staff that do an excellent job for us. But I was gratified to see that in the Coventry Evening Telegraph, a lovely letter from a resident saying Nuneaton and Bedworth Council have got the finest refuse collection, and perhaps Birmingham ought to come over and have a look and see how we run it. I thought it was brilliant. But we as a council don't really, we're quick to criticise, but we're never really quick to praise our staff.
I think the recommendation says that feedback and comments was said by the portfolio holder for central services. You can pass all the positive stuff that's happened today. It is a very positive report. Everybody, I think, is speaking from the same head sheet, trying to deal with problems as they arise. And according to the testimony I had this morning or this afternoon, is good. Let's keep these figures up and keep going. Pat ourselves in the back, because occasionally that's what we should do. You know. So thanks for the report, and thanks to everybody who's sat in this crowd.
Thank you, Chair.
Take item number 7 then. Chris?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Okay. Report on formal complaints and freedom of information requests. The information that's being presented here is the total number of formal complaints by service area for 2016-17, and the monthly reported number by service area for 2017-18, up to the point of producing the report. Also presented is the number of complaints escalated to stage 2. Another panel has asked for that previously. And that's as at the monthly reporting point. Also noted in here are the revisions made to the customer feedback system, which we mentioned earlier, which went live on 1st of September, which address the recommendations of the Economic and Corporate OSP, FOI and Complaints Review Working Group. And then there's also the total number of FOI requests received, again for 2016-17, and the monthly reported number. also presented in the report. So formal complaints recorded, 2016-17, there were 587, and you've got the service areas in the table at 5.2. The number responded to or acknowledged in 10 days. And I've said this before at this meeting, and hence why we had the working group. What I do on a monthly basis is I look at all complaints, and I am looking, if the system wasn't quite giving me the information I needed, I had to look at every complaint to see whether it had been acknowledged or not. The new system will be able to provide me more of a summary, so I'm going to be saving time on a monthly basis with the new system, so I'm happy with that. So this figure here, in terms of what you're getting in the integrated performance report, where an officer won't have done that information, that checking that I do on a monthly basis here, on that one that you've got on the quarter report this time, there will be a difference. Moving forward, 1st of September we went live, so the first quarter that will have the 3 months of the new system will be the third quarter. Does that make sense? October, November, December. Okay. Okay. So percentage responded to or acknowledged in 10 days for 2016-17 was 57%. What I've put at 5.4 is how we report on a monthly basis to management team. So management team get this table on a monthly basis. Here you've got April, May and June and July. So they can see how many they've received within their service area, the number completed or acknowledged in 10 days, how many are outside of 10 days, and then where there are a number awaiting to be accepted, in other words allocated. We also note where there has been some escalators, so that's when they go to stage 2. So there, at 5.4 is what management team receive on a monthly basis. There are, and I've reported this before, there are 2 monthly reports that get produced, complaints and FOIs, and they go to the customer feedback coordinators that get circulated, and so they can use that to chase on ones that the status isn't complete. Section 6 on page 30 talks about the review working group. The recommendations, excuse me, the recommendations that went to Cabinet were agreed. What I've put against each one, so A to I, in bold, are the responses to each of the recommendations. So the first one, which was to have included and itemised in the quarterly performance report, I wrote this before I realised what they were doing on the integrated performance report, so this is my fault. I put there that the monthly reports to management team will be included in the quarterly reporting, but actually they've been done in a different way, which is fine. If you're happy with that, I'm happy with that. B, the need to review all the letters and emails that are sent out to complainants. All letter templates have been updated based upon user feedback. We've already had some positive comments about the new letters from members. Users have always been able to add a contact name to the FOI process, but not to the complaints process. So in the updated feedback process, users are now able to update the signature where relevant, so that they can actually put an officer name in there instead of just a coordinator title. A fundamental change is required to the system that will give the operators the ability to reallocate items to other officers and departments as necessary. FOIs can be reallocated, but the new complaints process now has the ability to also reassign cases. If the complaint has been assigned to the wrong service area, users are able to reassign the case back to customer services, who will reallocate. They decided to do that because actually it's a learning point for customer services. If they've allocated a company to the wrong area, if they get one that comes back, then they can learn that they've got it wrong in the first place. Once a case has been accepted, however, it cannot be reassigned. It was required that each entry have a subject title as well as the reference number. That was actually available with the old process and remains part of the updated process, so I'm not quite sure where that recommendation came from. Officers need to know the named officer to contact to delete a case. So cases are allocated to a team. They're not actually allocated to a named officer, they're allocated to a team. And cases only remain on the system indefinitely if they haven't been completed, which was something we talked about earlier. Cases cannot be deleted. They can be closed if the duplicates or errors, they can be closed then. Once accepted, the case shows a named officer, and the complainant will have been notified and a response must then be sent. One of the recommendations was there is a need to ensure training is given to all officers with a coordinating and responding role. We're putting that training together at the moment, so that's customer services and the HR training officer will be coordinating that training, and similarly for point G for members, so it will also be training for members. At this point, I think some members aren't aware of the process and the fact that when they put in a complaint, what happens to it and what they can do. And I just wanted to mention that members can, on our website, they can register for a self-account. And if you register for a self-account and you make a complaint, you can actually see the process of that complaint on that self-account.
That's the first I've heard of it.
There you go.
Good.
You heard it here first. All officers should be responsible and ensure that the appropriate information requested from them is gathered in a timely manner to enable responses to be made within target. So that's really management team and service managers monitor the performance of their areas and have to take appropriate action. And that would flow from the monthly reporting that goes to management team. And then at I, obviously this panel, they want to review the system again in 6 months. So I think we can then report, in 6 months we can compare the information that we get in 6 months with what we've got here. In terms of FOIs, the 2016-17 table at 7.2, 453 FOIs received, and that's by service area. And then there's an average number of days to complete by service area. The average overall is 22. Statistic. At 7.3, this is where the monthly reporting goes to management team. So again, what's highlighted on there is where there are, as you mentioned earlier, Councillor Margaret, where they are awaiting action or awaiting allocation. They're actually highlighted at this point. If they're outside 20 days and the service area, I note there on that report so that they can see that there are some waiting to be allocated, so that's where action should then be taken. Any questions?
Councillor Condico?
Yeah, quite often for general complaints, little whatever, or things go to the contact centre. Obviously, if people are dealing with a planning application, they may have correspondence with a planning officer over a month or many months, and then they might be unhappy and complain to the planning officer. Likewise, people might write to Philip Richardson or Alan Franks. Are all those things captured in some way in the complaint system as well, or do they just live in a different world?
All complaints, if they're formal complaints, should be recorded on this system. The information here is only as good as the input, so all officers should all funnel through to customer services.
I think, Chair, it's fair to say if it's a service complaint, anything that comes through to Alan or myself or Simone is channeled through to customer services. If it's not a service complaint but a complaint about something else, then obviously it won't go through that process. It will go through in some process. If it's a complaint about officer conduct, for example, we won't put that through.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Chair. complaints are a bugbear of mine, mainly because I'm fed up of doing them myself at work. This acknowledgement within 10 days, it really gets my goat. Last week I had 4 on my desk, all done within 10 days or acknowledged within 10 days. Now I've got 6 on my desk awaiting to be done. I view it as basic customer service to at least acknowledge, not even the investigation, I accept investigations can take 10, 20, 30 days depending on the complexity. But even an acknowledgement, say thank you for your letter of complaint, I acknowledge receipt of it and we are investigating your complaint. Basic. But why aren't we doing it? Because according to the 16-17 figures, 57% weren't responded to. Sorry, were responded to in acknowledged in 10 days. And then we are getting better, 79%. I still don't think it's good enough. But I have to say, looking at this, the biggest culprit is waste management, from the looks of it. And I'm sorry, Brent, to have to say that. But I don't see what is the harm in having an expectation. It's on me as a team leader as an expectation that I must reply to something or acknowledge something within 10 days. If I don't, and it's a successive issue, my performance is called into question. So I'd like to know why particularly waste management is an issue and why what performance management issues are being taken with those officers who are continually not acknowledging complaints, because I'm sorry, it's not good enough. And I hope it improves under the new system, but waste management will be something I'll be keeping my eye on, because as someone who deals with them, it really annoys me.
First point, under the new system, there'll be an automatic acknowledgement, although the officer, they can actually decide that if they're going to respond immediately, it goes out. So we don't send 2 things, because we'd get complaints about sending 2, which was originally why we didn't do it in the first place. So that's the first thing. So that with the new system, that will happen. There's also, in terms of the old system, and I can't speak for waste management because the system doesn't always show me whether somebody has asked a question or gone back to the complainant, because they haven't recorded it on the system. That doesn't mean to say they might have picked up the phone and spoke to the complainant. And I think in a lot of cases that actually did happen, they just didn't record it on the system. So as I've said on more than one occasion, I can only report what the system is telling me. And if an officer forgets to go back and notice that they've actually contacted, and sometimes when I'm reading it, it does actually say somebody will have, presumably the customer feedback coordinator says I've passed it to so and so and they're going to go and speak to, and that's it. But I can't say that actually happened. It's not there. Whereas on the new system, hopefully we've done a bit of training. We've shown customer feedback coordinators that they need to record it. I was there. I was actually there, and I said you need to actually put on there the date that you're and what you've done, not just for my benefit and for reporting here, but when customer services can see that. So if somebody comes through it, they can see all the history of what's actually happened. So with the new system, hopefully, that will be a better response, I think. There have been issues in waste management, however.
Right. The biggest issue with waste management is that 95% plus of the informal complaints are my bin hasn't been emptied, I'm really upset, empty my bin. So we go and empty the bin. It then can take several days to send a letter to say we've been and emptied your bin, which the residents knows we've been emptied the bin. So what the guys do is they go and empty the bin, and someone will phone up and say, sorry we missed your bin, we've emptied your bin. What we haven't done, and personally I think that is in that particular type of complaint is probably the best response is empty the bin and phone someone to say sorry we didn't empty your bin, we've been and done that. and quite a lot of time we get emails. Well, I think probably if someone's initiated by email, I'll look on the basis they're happy to have a response by email, and I'll certainly am. So what we are really when you've done that, just tell somebody you've done it and put it on the system. You've done that. We get hardly. In fact, I cannot remember the last escalated complaint I got from waste management on something not done, which is where I would pick it up that someone's not happy with the response. And that is, and I suppose I would say this in one sense, that waste management is a bit different to some of the other services, but I think it is, because it is 90, well, it's probably even more than 95% of the time, it's for people who want them being empty.
So we just need to tighten up on people recording it correctly on the system.
Yeah, because we go out and we, even when we, to be honest, Councillor Wilson, even when we're pretty sure they haven't put their bin out on time, we'll still go and pick it up, because it's not worth the argument about it wasn't there when we drove past, which is, and I've been working in the refuse-related area for more than 20 years, and I know that the vast majority of people who phone me up and say that you haven't collected my bin, it's because you haven't got it out there when we drove past. Why would the bin crew drive past it when they know they've got to go back? Why do they do that? Well, they wouldn't, would they? You just don't. So it is about tightening up, saying this is what we've done, get it on the system, knock it off the stats.
So we welcome this report then, and shows that the new system is beginning to work, and hopefully the little bits and pieces will be tightened up and sorted out for the next time. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Right, item number 9 then.
Yes, Chair. So what I was proposing to do, Chair, is just very quickly go through the update report, which is in the table form, and just pick up the key bits really. So dispose of the council house, which is on the front of the newspaper in any case, there's a offer there, so that's in the legal process. Completion is anticipated by the end of November. It is in the hands of both legal teams though, so as to how quickly the legal profession will move it up, I don't know. Relocating council operations from St Mary's Road Depot to Gresham, we're pretty much there. We've still got some stock at St Mary's because we don't want to take it from the stock room there to put it in the stock room at Gresham Road to then put it on the van. We still send the vans there, so we only handle it once, and but we're running down stocks there, they'll soon be gone. And we are still liaising with the Environment Agency. That's going well for getting the waste transfer licence for Gresham Road. But as we've got it for St Mary's, we're still using that as the waste transfer site at the moment. But all staff, apart from, when I say the skeleton staff, I'm meaning 2 or 3 people, are at St Mary's for that bit. Everybody else is up at Gresham Road.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Clondergan?
Can you just repeat what you said about the waste management licence? Because I've not seen the application on the EA website.
Yeah, we're working with the EA to get that application. We made one, and they wanted further information, so we're working with them about that further information that they need.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Margaret?
Just very quickly in relation to the action plan. I welcome the action plan and all the points within it, so I think there are lots of achievements within it. However, in relation to page 79, so the implementation of the General Fund Capital Programme, could we just, because it's our job to scrutinise, could we just change various and make sure that we've got named officers or roles within that? I understand that it covers a large scope, but there must be core officers that take responsibility. So to just say various, I don't think in this document works very well. And I just didn't know whether it would be possible maybe to name a few people, just so that they name for public scrutiny.
My answer to that, I suppose it would be, is that the detailed capital programme is approved on a scheme-by-scheme basis by Cabinet and then updated in November, I think. So that goes scheme by scheme, but which down to each portfolio. So my answer would be the detail is there, and this is the overview.
That's fine. That's fine.
But then, just to give a couple of other positive things, that disposal of St Mary's Road Depot is going well. So we are anticipating that the developer will put the planning application in by the end of October, which is great. If that cracks on, we'll get some houses built there. And then just to say that the other good thing is that we are Carver are in the new town centre, and that's working extremely well. I wasn't going to particularly say anything else about any other things. Chair, any questions?
Any questions? Just welcome report and
Going okay.
go in the right direction, yeah? Okay. Well,
Didn't you want to ask about the review?
No, that's the other strategy for the other.
The other contacted earlier, I've been getting them mixed forward.
item number 10, which is on page 92. A briefing note from the chair. Well, that's a briefing note that myself, Shirley and Alan sat down and had a look to see what possible accountability that we can hand back through my presence on combined authority. Remember, I'm a non-constituent member of Warwickshire, and I can assure you that nobody was more surprised than what I was when I actually got this. In fact, it was only about 3 weeks ago when we had to make some inquiries to find out who was doing what and whatever. But I am on the West Midlands Combined Authority Scrutiny Committee as a non-constituent member. As part of that, I'm on 2 working parties. There's one, we thought the land situation within the combined authority might be a benefit for the council, considering we've got Coventry, Warwickshire, Solihull, Birmingham, Wolverhampton and various other places. It's a big portfolio, this land portfolio. So I agreed to go on the task and finish group for the land, and I was rather foolishly trying to wangle my way out of trying to do something about the fire services within the combined authority, which has got to be looked at as well. And I explained in Warwickshire we had our own police commissioners and fire authority. I was told, oh, somebody with an outside view looking in might be a good idea. So I've ended up on that as in the task and finish group. But trying to report back is what we're saying here is what we're suggesting, what actually happens, and looking at it, I think it's the only possible way that we can, that I can, or we can try and do something reported back from the combined authority, because the majority is done through the mayors, through the LEPs and various other cabinets and scrutiny committees, which I'm not a member of. So it's something that a lot of people never wanted. It's something that the current government decided to press forward, and this is what we've got, and we're trying to find some way of reporting back to this council on the Nuneaton and Bedworth related issues. I don't know how many times the Nuneaton and Bedworth related issues will come up, but I think this might be the template for us to do this. But whatever the panel decides. Does this seem like a good template for us to take a step forward? Because this is brand new. I'm pretty sure that, well, last year when I was on the scrutiny committee, I was basically meet and greets and tried to get to some sort of process. This is a process we have decided to do in the Nuneaton and Bedworth, and we'll be saying that to all the constituent members within Warwickshire. And we've also tried to get a substitute for myself if we require one. We thought the chair of one of the scrutiny members might be the best idea of having a chair, and Councillor Chris Watkins has decided to be my substitute. So we had to try and get something in black and white, and we feel, well, I feel that this is the best way to turn around and do it, because the leadership, Warwickshire and obviously in the LDPs for elects, etc. I'm only supposed to be scrutinising these things. I'm not actually a member. So I don't have a vote, but I have a voice. And I'm sure Shelley will tell you, she's attended a couple of meetings with me. I'm not shy in putting that voice forward. And of course, through last year's process of trying to set things up, everything will be on the web. So all the meetings will be for public view, and if they wish to turn around and do that. I made that suggestion, and that's what I've agreed to do. So every overview and scrutiny meeting, etc., should be there on the web, so people can see what is actually happening. Councillor Condicott?
Yeah, there's quite a few positive things coming out as well as negatives, obviously. On the positive side, the combined authority is looking at big transport projects in Birmingham, and on the back of that, there's potential for making progress on Stockingford Station, because obviously the train service from Nuneaton to Birmingham through Stockingford then links in with all the infrastructure improvements they're doing on the line through Castle to Fort Dunlop and things. So I think having a good voice on scrutiny would be really important to making sure that we don't just have a West Midlands combined authority that does a brilliant train service up to the boundaries. It actually makes a connected service.
But as I said, Chair, I'm the Chair, sorry. As I said, it's a question of sucking and seeing again and trying to get something in process in order for this to work. And I said, hands up, I was surprised as anybody else as that I was the Warwickshire representative. So, and we did ask, we never sort of, hid it or anything. We asked if anybody else was interested, and they're overwhelmed by the silence.
Thanks, Chair. Just in relation to understanding the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at the West Midlands Combined Authority, are there lots of scrutiny panels, or is there just one? So the reason I'm asking that is just to understand while I support Councillor Watkins going forward as a substitute, I was also considering how the other Overview and Scrutiny Committees in this authority would be involved. And importantly, if it's only an economic, or if it's an economic committee, then maybe it should be somebody from this committee. I'm easy on that, but I just was trying to understand the structure at the combined authority and how we can fit into that.
There's part of the problem is that it was fragmented, and what they decided to do is the new prep process was going to be there's one representative for Warwickshire, and I am the one representative on the scrutiny panels. But as I say, I've got a voice, I haven't got a vote, because whenever they scrutinise anything, it'll be the Mets coming to Warwickshire, etc. They will be the ones that make the decisions, and we can have a look at the decisions. I believe that the Mayor, we've asked the Mayor to come in front of the scrutiny committee at least twice a year. So we're trying. There's other members of the scrutiny boards have been down to see how they do it in London, to see how they do it in Manchester and various other places. But this setup we seem to have got in combined authority for the West Midlands seems to be, I would say, the best format of the whole lot.
But what
surprises me.
Sorry, Chair. So what I'm asking is two things really. First of all, is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at the Combined Authority, what its remit is, because if we're getting the agendas or minutes or information, if they're looking at wider issues than just economic, should our colleagues across the Overview and Scrutiny be getting copies of this? Because I wouldn't just want it to be us, and us to agree that it be us, and exclude other colleagues. And second of all is to consider the member that goes there. And I'm not asking to make a decision now, but I'm just trying to understand whether that should be an economic committee member or whether it should be a member of the overview and scrutiny community. So I'm trying to understand what their remit is, because it doesn't say within here. So I don't know what they're looking at. You mentioned fire.
The member for Warwickshire is me.
Yeah.
There's no other member for Warwickshire, it's me. That's it, full stop.
But why are we... I think what I'm asking is, we're getting reports, and you're asking us to agree that.
Yeah.
So the overview, the Economic and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Panel, we're going to get it, but should the housing or the health or others be getting these minutes? Who should it be going to?
It's just bureaucracy gone mad with Councillor Mowbray, because it's not expected that us, as a more or less an outsider, is going to influence the decisions of the new authority. Although, when I was representing this borough, I did get the assurance that we would be eligible to enter into the transport fares, etc., that are set up under the new authority, because we're a constituent member.
Chair, just very quickly, just to come back on that, because it isn't about bureaucracy. It's simply in the report, Councillor Haynes. It says here that minutes will be attached to our agenda. And all I'm saying is, if those minutes are relevant to our programme of work, it makes total sense. If they're relevant to other people's programme of work within this authority, I just didn't know whether any consideration had been given, whether that might be shared, or it may automatically be shared. But that was the only question I was asking. It wasn't about the combined authority.
Shall we?
Yeah, I'd just try and clarify it a little bit. The recommendation here was that it would come to this panel, you're correct. The remit of the Combined Authorities Overview and Scrutiny is much wider than that. To answer your question, yes, it could be that you might decide you would like all members on all OSPs to get the agendas and minutes. That's for you to decide, and that's, I think, what's been brought here today. But obviously, as has been said, we aren't going to have a great deal of influence, so and anybody who's interested enough is going to be able to view those minutes, those broadcasts on the web if they want to see them. And Dennis is going to be reporting to council about the work of the combined authority per se. So if anybody's got any, it was just a case of this is where it sits because of it's the nature of the combined authority. But obviously, if you felt that you wanted to put it to a wider audience, then that's your prerogative.
Councillor Beaumont.
Chairman, it does strike me that the most important element is the budget. And the distribution of that budget and the issues which the budget is addressing is going to indicate to us whether we feel we're getting a fair share of attention from the opportunities presented by this configuration of authorities. And I think this represents the first steps, if you like, the baby steps towards scrutinising what work the West Midlands Combined Authority does. And as I say, if you follow the money, then you've got a good chance of picking up whether there are issues which do or do not relate to Nuneaton, and whether we should be raising concerns or welcoming whatever comes our way. You know.
Councillor Condicor.
I must apologise, I need to go because I've been at the County Council all day, but one quick point, it is quite useful public questions going in as another way of driving to what the scrutiny does. And even the Coventry and Warwickshire lets people write in a question by letter. And so it is useful if we've got the public able to view what happens at scrutiny, them actually having and by public I mean public and councillors obviously, have a way of submitting something as a suggestion to scrutiny.
That's something we could perhaps take up. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the report as a good first step. I think, to begin with, it's worth having them go to economic panel members. It's also open for, because we all get the agenda notifications for all the other ones, so if anyone else is interested from environment, health or housing about the workings of economic, they get the notification the same as we do, and if we want to, we go and download and have a look at the agenda items for that. So I don't see the issue with that. If it works out that isn't coming through, or a lot of what they're doing is health, for example, we can review this in 12 months, it's a living, breathing document, then we can say to health, actually we think you should get these two, what do you think? And then leave it to health to sort out. I'm pleased to see that we will be getting a leaders report. It's something I made a request of Councillor Harvey of via the Managing Director, so I'm pleased that he's agreed to that, because I think it's important that we know, just as what he does as a cabinet, which we have the right to attend, because it's at 6 o'clock, so it's more convenient for people to attend. Most of the meetings for the combined authority are during the day and not as convenient for those of us who work to get to. So I'm pleased that Councillor Harvey has compromised on that and agreed to do that, because I think it's important that if he is representing us, then we also have the right to question him on what he's done about that. But as things go for now, I'm happy to support the report in its entirety, and if it's not working, we revisit it in 12 months' time.
Are everybody happy with that then?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think thank you. I did try and wangle my way out of it, but I never worked. Right, forward plan.
Mr. The forward plan for this month is there. If anybody's got any questions or anything, it advises you of the work. And if there's anything there that you feel you might want to bring forward to the work programme, then let me know.
Is there anything else that stands out to anybody, everybody? Chris?
Thank you, Chair. I think the community infrastructure levy is an important one, because with all the development, and we can argue where the development goes, but wherever it ends up, you're going to have infrastructure of some kind. I think it would be important to give that some scrutiny. It's marked down as economic on here as the scrutiny for it to look at. It's not on the September Cabinet papers that have just come out, so perhaps there's an opportunity for us to look at it before it goes to Cabinet. And
The next meeting is November, so I can find out.
if we can have an opportunity to have a say before it goes to Cabinet, then
Okay, well,
I think it would be beneficial.
well, look at that then. Anything else? Is that the work programme covered?
The work programme, Chair, is just a couple of amendments, and I'll update the FLI and complaints review report to review and report back in March 18, because we said we'd do it 6 months after implementation, and it was done the 1st of September, so Chris is saying they'll bring it back in March, so we'll update that. West Midlands Combined Authority, obviously we'll update as we've just agreed, so I'll put those dates in there. I was getting that middled up, so I won't mention that. And a briefing note requested on town centre paving maintenance. I'll chase that one up as well, so hopefully next time I'll be able to have something for you on that. You never know. And as we've said previously, we're going to have that report from Les. I think looking at this agenda, most of the next meeting will be Les and Jonathan White talking town centres.
Okay. Good. So we're all right with that then, everybody?
Yep.
So nothing else on on no other items, so thank you for your attendance and safe journey home.